What's going on?
Hey.
Thanks for doing this again.
Absolutely, glad to have it back. So remind me again, what are we doing today?
So today we're going to do the suspension lift.
Okay.
It's a leveling kit.
All right.
So we're going to do a 2.5 in the front and then a 1 in the back, just to kind of level it out and lift it a little bit.
Should be
and
easy enough.
then upper control arms for the front because the rear doesn't need them.
Perfect. Perfect. So. Yeah. And how's everything working with the suspension we did the last
time? Oh, it's working great.
Good. No problems.
No problems. Everything's smooth.
Good. No weird pulls in the steering or anything.
No. Sometimes when I hit a big bump, it'll kind of bounce, but that's expected until they break in.
Yeah. Well, in front end alignment.
In front end alignment. Yeah. So. Which is going to have to happen after this.
Yeah.
So.
Perfect. All right. We'll
cool.
get it taken care of.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it.
Thanks for bringing it back.
Yeah.
All right, so before I get started, I'm gonna go ahead and get these parts unboxed and just kind of laid out so that they're easier to get to as I progress in the project. On this side, I have the 2.5-inch lift kit from Truxxx. That's Truxx, Truxxx. And I've never seen these parts before, so this will be interesting. Got some hardware. Got a bunch of bubble wrap. Seem to be packaged fairly well. That looks like the 1-inch for the rears. Nope, that'd be the 1-inch for the rears. Well, they seem to be very well made. Kind of a neat product. Those are definitely the fronts, and these are definitely the rears, just based on knowing what the top of that strut looks like. Right here is the custom upper control arms from BTF Fabrications, and they actually fabricate these at the time of order. So if you're looking to get a set of these, just know there is a lead time on them. You're not going to get them right away. And they definitely seal this box up well. We got tape and staples. So that is a boxed, fully welded upper control arm with ball joint. Bushings already pressed in, which is nice. We have a stack of washers. And we have all of the pivots and spacers. That is some nice stuff. I've never bought anything from BTF before, but looking at the quality of these so far, I would definitely say I'd put them on my list of stuff I would purchase. I can't get over how stunning these upper control arms are. The welds are absolutely beautiful, and the powder coat is flawless. Absolutely a beautiful product. And the people who made it should be very proud. This lift kit, which is also a leveling kit, is a little bit different than a lot of the other lift kits on the market. It is not extensive of replacing lower cross members and lower control arms, although you do have to replace the upper control arms on this just because of the different geometry of the suspension. Right before this part of the project took off, I made the comment that this was going to be a piece of cake. We did just replace the struts. How hard would it be to take them out again and add the lift kit? There's like a walnut stuck down here. I'm starting in the front because there's actually going to be a little bit more work with the front, being that we also have to replace the upper control arms. And that's kind of where I went wrong on the whole thing of this being a piece of cake, because when we did the struts, we never had to undo those upper control arms. So there is some stuff that's got to be taken off that's not been taken off yet. Oh, remember these? I remember. All right, now determine that this hat's got to be spun 180 degrees. Unfortunately, no one makes an extended strut for this particular application. So instead, what we've had to do is use a spacer that goes between the top of the strut and the strut tower. This pushes the lower suspension down giving you a nice lift and an even level. Although the holes in the spacers were the proper size, the bolts on the top of the strut hats were actually too long to fit in that spacer. And they do make mention of that in the instructions, that you may have to trim those down. They only touched a little tiny bit, but I didn't feel comfortable that it was seating all the way. So we went ahead and trimmed those studs off so that they weren't touching the spacer at all. And that made me feel a lot better about the installation. Taking the upper control arms out wasn't really terrible. The bolts were a little bit tight, but they did slide out pretty easily, being that the bushings were, well, used. Putting the new ones in was a little bit more of a fight because the bushings were fresh and not compressed or worn out in any way, shape, or form. Plus, being urethane bushings, they're a little bit more rigid. So with a little manipulation, we were able to slide them in, after of course cleaning up all the rust behind the old ones. Admittedly, this was actually a little bit easier because if you remember in the last video, we did replace the struts. Had we not done that then and been doing it now, it would have been much, much worse of a job to do. These BTF Fabrication upper control arms replaced the standard ball joint, which are notoriously weak, with a 1-inch FK uniball, along with some aluminum machine parts and grade 8 hardware. It went together fabulously, and I have a feeling they're going to last for a long, long time. The great part is too, that ball joint is easily replaceable should you need to. Everything bolted back together quite beautifully. And now that the front end is back together and on the ground, it is quite obvious the difference that this kit has made. And we're excited to move on to the rear. With the rear of the vehicle off the ground and that first tire off, that's when the reality set in. And I remembered there's that tiny little crevice where I have to jam my hands to get those strut bolts out. Originally, I was thinking that I could leave the strut connected to the lower control arm and actually push it down far enough to get the spacer put on top of the strut and put it back into the strut tower. I quickly learned that that was not going to happen, and the entire strut had to come back out of the vehicle. I can't say if the fronts were more difficult than the rears or the rears were more difficult than the fronts. They both had a certain amount of work that had to be done to them, but either way, it was kind of the same. However, in the rear, you didn't have to worry about that upper control arm. It's a completely different suspension setup. In episode 1, I did make a comment about how doing things like strut replacement isn't fun because it doesn't add performance. It doesn't add any type of appearance difference. But it was a necessity, and it was. Because now we were able to put in an aftermarket lift kit, which is a performance part and is definitely an appearance part. So sometimes it's got to be maintenance, other times it is definitely about the enhancements, and this was a great enhancement to do. When you think about a 2.5-inch lift kit, it doesn't seem like much, but it truly is a day and night difference. It has made a huge improvement to the look of this vehicle, and I'm sure as far as performance, it's going to make a huge difference there as well. But now's a great time to remind you that if you are going to put any type of suspension package in, whether it's a lift, a lowering, or just a sports package, a 4-wheel alignment is absolutely necessary. Not only for your safety, but for your ride comfort. While this project is not at its end, this episode is. I thank each and every one of you for tuning in. I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. I also appreciate comments and try to get back to them as quickly as I possibly can. But for now, travel's await.